On the fifth floor of a sand-colored apartment building on Rue Verdun, in the affluent Rouch district of West Beirut, a woman who called herself Erica Chambers began her day. It was early 1973, and the city, then known as the Paris of the Middle East, was a complex tapestry of international intrigue, commercial vibrancy, and simmering political tension. To her neighbors, she was an eccentric but harmless European poet and artist, a woman of independent means who had chosen Beirut for its bohemian charm and Mediterranean light. Her cover was reinforced by the mundane details of her existence, the 2 cats that roamed her apartment, the scent of oil paints that clung to her clothes, and the irregular hours she kept, which she explained away as the unpredictable nature of creative inspiration. She was known to spend long afternoons on her balcony, ostensibly sketching the cityscape or finding poetic meter in the rhythm of the streets below, her gaze often lingering on the building directly opposite. This woman, this artist, was a fiction, a meticulously constructed legend designed by the Israeli Mossad. Her true name was known to only a handful of people in a Tel Aviv operations room, and her real purpose had nothing to do with art. She was a combatant, a forward reconnaissance specialist, and the living sensor array for an operation of unprecedented audacity. Her balcony was not a place of reflection but an observation post, and her artist's eye was not capturing beauty but mapping patterns of life, security protocols, and vulnerabilities of the man who lived in the apartment across the street, Ali Hassan Salameh, the chief of operations for the Black September organization and the architect of the 1972 Munich Olympic massacre. The strategic problem facing Israel in the autumn of 1972 was one of both retribution and deterrence. The Munich massacre, broadcast live to a global audience, was not merely a terrorist attack, it was a profound national trauma and a strategic humiliation. The 11 murdered Israeli athletes and officials represented a violation of a sanctuary, and the perpetrators, the Black September Organization, a militant faction of the Palestine Liberation Organization, had demonstrated a new level of operational reach and media savvy. The Israeli government, under Prime Minister Golda Meir, concluded that conventional diplomatic or military responses were insufficient. A clear and unequivocal message had to be sent that the State of Israel would hold the architects of such attacks personally accountable, regardless of where they sought refuge. This decision gave birth to Operation Wrath of God, a covert, long-term campaign of targeted assassination directed by a clandestine committee known as Committee X. The initial challenge, however, was immense. The leadership of Black September and the PLO were not conventional military targets, they were embedded within civilian populations, protected by layers of security, and scattered across Europe and the Middle East, with their nerve center located in Beirut, Lebanon. At the time, Beirut was a sovereign capital, and a direct military incursion was politically untenable. Early attempts to eliminate key figures through methods like letter bombs had yielded mixed and often messy results, lacking the precision and psychological impact desired. The targets were highly security conscious, constantly changing their routines, locations, and modes of communication, rendering traditional surveillance methods difficult and dangerous. The intelligence picture was fragmented, relying on a patchwork of human sources, signals intelligence, and analysis that often lagged behind the target's movements. It became clear that to dismantle the command structure of Black September, a new methodology was required, one that could penetrate the very heart of the enemy's sanctuary and execute a decisive, surgical strike. The primary target of this intensified focus was Ali Hassan Salameh, a figure of almost mythical proportions within the Palestinian resistance and international intelligence circles. Known as the Red Prince for his flamboyant lifestyle, expensive clothes, and penchant for sports cars, he was the son of a revered Arab nationalist commander killed in the 1948 war. This lineage gave him immense prestige, but it was his own charisma, intelligence, and ruthlessness that propelled him to the pinnacle of the PLO's security and intelligence apparatus. As the founder of Force 17, the PLO's elite commando and intelligence unit, and the operational mastermind of Black September, Salameh was directly responsible for planning and executing the Munich attack. His profile was a complex blend of contradictions. He was a visible socialite in Beirut's high society, frequently seen in the company of journalists, diplomats, and celebrities, yet he operated with extreme paranoia and a sophisticated understanding of tradecraft. He moved between multiple safe houses, never slept in the same bed for more than a few nights consecutively, and surrounded himself with a coterie of heavily armed bodyguards. His operational security was formidable, designed to thwart assassination attempts, which he knew were inevitable. He communicated through cutouts, used coded language, and constantly varied his routes and schedules. For the Mossad, Salome was more than just a target, he was the embodiment of the enemy's new generation of leadership, educated, media-aware, and operationally sophisticated. Eliminating him was not just an act of revenge, it was a strategic imperative aimed at decapitating the operational capabilities of Black September and sowing chaos and fear within the PLO's command echelon. The challenge was getting close enough to him in an environment like Beirut, where a single misstep by a foreign operative would mean certain capture, torture, and death, and could potentially ignite a wider regional conflict. The conventional methods had failed, and the limitations of remote intelligence gathering were starkly apparent. A new plan began to coalesce within Mossad's Caesarea department, the unit responsible for special operations. It was a proposal of extreme high risk, bordering on the reckless, a direct-action commando raid into the heart of Beirut. The concept, which would become Operation Spring of Youth, was to bypass the difficulties of a singular, deniable assassination and instead conduct a multi-pronged, simultaneous assault to eliminate several key PLO leaders in a single night. The audacity of the plan lay in its complexity and its flagrant violation of Lebanese sovereignty. It required inserting a significant force of elite Israeli commandos, undetected, into a densely populated urban center, having them navigate to multiple, dispersed target locations, execute their missions with split-second precision, and then exfiltrate before the Lebanese army or PLO factions could mount an effective response. The obstacles were staggering. First, there was the intelligence problem, the need for precise, real-time, actionable intelligence on the exact locations of at least 3 high-value targets on a specific night. This could not be achieved from satellite imagery or electronic intercepts alone, it required a human source on the ground, someone who could observe the target's routines over an extended period and provide the final confirmation. Second, the logistical challenges were enormous. It involved a combined sea and land operation, with commandos landing on a public beach, being met by assets on the ground with transportation, and then moving through a foreign city dressed as civilians. Every detail, from the make and model of the rented cars to the clothing worn by the soldiers, had to be perfect to avoid suspicion. Third, the risk of a catastrophic failure was immense. A firefight could escalate into a running battle with PLO militias or the Lebanese gendarmerie, leading to Israeli casualties or, even worse, captures. The political fallout from a failed or exposed operation would be devastating for Israel on the international stage. It was a plan that left no room for error. The technological and tactical preparation for the operation was a masterclass in meticulous detail and creative problem-solving. The Mossad's Technical Operations Division, NEBO, worked in conjunction with the Special Forces units to tailor every piece of equipment to the specific demands of an urban covert raid. The primary weapons for the assassination teams were 22 caliber Beretta Model 71 pistols, chosen for their reliability, compact size, and, most importantly, their effectiveness when fitted with sound suppressors. The small caliber round was less likely to overpenetrate walls and cause collateral damage, and the suppressed report would be indistinguishable from ambient city noise, crucial for maintaining surprise during the simultaneous assaults. For breaching, small, precisely calibrated explosive charges were prepared, designed to blow open apartment doors without bringing down the surrounding structure. Communications were another critical area. The teams needed to maintain contact with each other and with the offshore command vessel, but using standard military radios would be instantly detectable. A system of encrypted, low-power radios was devised, with operatives also trained in a set of simple, pre-arranged signals using flashlights and hand gestures for the final approach. Perhaps the most ingenious element was the transportation. Mossad agents, operating under deep cover in Beirut weeks in advance, rented a series of ordinary civilian cars, sedans from American and European manufacturers common on the streets of Beirut. These vehicles were then driven to a secluded location where they were subtly modified. Their wiring was altered to ensure they would start without fail, their tires were checked for maximum reliability, and in some cases, small caches of backup weapons and ammunition were secreted within the door panels or under the seats. The operational plan dictated that the commandos themselves would be disguised. Some would be dressed as couples, walking hand in hand to appear as late-night revelers, a tactic designed to disarm any casual observer. Others would be dressed in civilian attire that would allow them to blend into the background. Every item of clothing, from the style of the shoes to the fabric of the jackets, was carefully selected to be consistent with what a European tourist or a local Beiruti would wear in the spring of 1973. Parallel to the technical preparations was the intensive training of the human assets. The operation drew upon the most elite units of the Israel Defense Forces, Sayeret Matkal for the primary assassination missions, Shayetet 13 naval commandos for securing the beach landing and extraction, and a contingent of paratroopers for a diversionary attack on a PLO headquarters. The commandos selected were not just the most physically capable soldiers but also the most intelligent and psychologically stable. They were moved to a secure training facility in Israel where a full-scale replica of the target buildings and surrounding streets in Beirut had been constructed based on intelligence photographs and schematics. Here, they rehearsed the raid relentlessly, hundreds of times, until every movement was ingrained in muscle memory. They practiced silent entry, room clearing in the dark, and rapid target identification based on memorized photographs. They drilled the precise timing of their movements, coordinating the 3 separate assault teams to strike their respective targets within the same 60-second window. The psychological conditioning was as crucial as the physical training. The soldiers were briefed on the moral and strategic justification for the mission, linking it directly to the memory of the Munich athletes. They were trained to operate with clinical detachment, to kill with precision, and to suppress the natural hesitation of engaging targets in a residential building where families, including children, were sleeping in adjacent apartments. The unit commanders, including Ehud Barak, who led one of the teams disguised as a woman, emphasized the importance of maintaining cover until the last possible second. They learned to walk, talk, and carry themselves not as soldiers, but as civilians, a mental transformation that was as challenging as any physical task. They were conditioned to face the possibility of capture and instructed on resistance to interrogation techniques, though the unspoken understanding was that capture was not an option, the mission was to be completed, or they were to die trying. The linchpin of the entire operation, however, was the construction of the cover identity for the forward reconnaissance operative. The woman selected for this role was a veteran of the Mossad's Katza program, chosen for her fluency in multiple languages, her European appearance, and her exceptional psychological resilience. The creation of her legend, Erica Chambers, was an exhaustive process undertaken by the Mossad's identity and documentation specialists. It began with the fabrication of a complete life history. She was given a British passport, one of several in a batch acquired through clandestine means and expertly doctored. Her backstory was that of a freelance writer and artist, born in Germany but educated in the United Kingdom, who had come to Beirut seeking inspiration. This cover was chosen for its inherent plausibility and its ability to explain an unconventional lifestyle. An artist's need for a specific view could justify renting a particular apartment, her erratic schedule could account for late-night observations, and her solitary profession minimized the need for extensive social entanglements that could compromise her cover. To make the legend verifiable, a trail of evidence was laid across Europe. A bank account was opened in her name in Geneva, with a history of regular transactions. A portfolio of her poetry was created, and correspondence was established with a literary agent in London, a role played by another Mossad agent. The most tangible elements of her cover were the props she brought with her to Beirut. Her apartment was filled with art supplies, canvases, easels, and a specific brand of French oil paints that were difficult to find locally, adding to her authenticity. And then there were the cats. The 2 animals served multiple purposes. They provided a plausible reason for her to remain in her apartment for long periods, reinforced her image as a gentle eccentric, and acted as a natural icebreaker with neighbors, allowing her to build casual relationships without raising suspicion. Her entire existence in Beirut was a piece of performance art, a sustained act of deception where every word, every purchase, and every gesture was calculated to support the fiction. Her insertion into Beirut was handled with the same precision as the rest of the plan. She arrived not on a direct flight from a suspicious location, but via a multi-leg journey through Europe, her travel history meticulously crafted to appear as that of a genuine tourist. Upon arriving in Beirut, she did not immediately seek out the target location. Instead, she spent several weeks living as her cover demanded, staying in a hotel, visiting art galleries, and making inquiries with real estate agents about finding a quiet apartment with good natural light for her painting. This period of acclimatization was crucial for establishing her bona fides and observing the local culture and rhythms. When she finally selected the apartment on Rue Verdun, it seemed a natural choice for an artist, offering a panoramic view of the city and the sea. Its true value, of course, was its direct line of sight into the apartment of Ali Hassan Salameh. Once established, her life fell into a rigid, clandestine routine. Days were spent in seemingly normal activity, shopping at local markets, interacting with shopkeepers, and tending to her cats. But her primary work began in the quiet hours of the evening and the pre-dawn darkness. Using a high-powered spotting scope concealed within her apartment and a camera with a telephoto lens, she began the painstaking process of mapping the life of her target. She photographed every visitor to his apartment, noting their faces, the license plates of their cars, and the times of their arrival and departure. She logged Salameh's own movements, identifying his bodyguards, his vehicles, and his patterns of behavior. She noted the security posture of the building, the presence of PLO sentries in the street, and the patrol schedules of the Lebanese gendarmerie. This raw intelligence was then encoded into seemingly innocuous letters she wrote to her literary agent in London, using a sophisticated system of steganography to hide her reports within the text of her poetry and prose. This was the slow, patient, and intensely dangerous work of deep-cover intelligence gathering, a period of profound isolation where a single mistake could unravel the entire operation. As the weeks turned into months, a detailed picture of the PLO leadership's routines in Beirut began to emerge from the intelligence flowing from Tariqa and other sources. The Mossad identified not one, but 3 high-value targets living within a few blocks of each other in the Rouch district. In addition to Ali Hassan Salameh, there was Mohammed Youssef al-Najjar, also known as Abu Youssef, the head of the PLO's political department and a key Black September figure, and Kamal Adwan, the PLO's chief of operations, responsible for directing attacks inside Israel and the occupied territories. A third target, Kamal Nasser, the PLO's official spokesman, lived in the same building as Adwan. The concentration of these senior leaders in such a small geographical area presented a unique tactical opportunity. The plan was refined. 3 separate assault teams from Sayeret Matkal would land and strike the target's apartments simultaneously. Team A, led by Ehud Barak, would target al-Najjar. Team B would be assigned to Adwan and Nasser. Team C was tasked with the most difficult and high-profile target, Ali Hassan Salameh. As the operational date, April 9, 1973, approached, the tension mounted. The final phase required absolute certainty. The operative on Rue Verdun was tasked with the most critical part of her mission, providing the go/no-go signal. She had to confirm with 100% certainty that the targets were in their residences on the night of the raid. In the days leading up to the operation, she maintained her constant vigil, her senses heightened by the immense pressure. She reported that Salameh was keeping an unusually consistent schedule, a potential sign of complacency that the Mossad hoped to exploit. On the evening of April 9, she observed the lights going on in the target apartments. She saw the familiar silhouettes of the bodyguards and, crucially, she caught a glimpse of figures she positively identified as the targets themselves returning home for the evening. Using a pre-arranged, secure communication method, a simple, coded signal transmitted from a device hidden in her apartment, she sent the final confirmation to the offshore command vessel. The operation was a go. The pieces were in motion. The long, tense period of waiting was over, and the brief, violent climax was about to begin. Under the cover of darkness on the night of April 9, a squadron of Israeli Navy missile boats cut through the Mediterranean waters, stopping several kilometers off the coast of Beirut. From these mother ships, smaller, inflatable Zodiac boats were launched, carrying the commandos toward the city's coastline. The landing was executed with near-perfect silence and precision on a public beach that, according to intelligence, was typically deserted at that hour. Waiting for them in the shadows of the coastal road were the rented cars, parked at precise intervals by the Mossad agents who had driven them there hours earlier and then vanished. The commandos, now dressed in their civilian disguises, quickly boarded the vehicles. The drivers were also Mossad agents, Qatsas who had been living in Beirut for months, their faces known to no one in the commando units. They knew the city's streets intimately, having practiced the routes to the target locations hundreds of times in their minds and dozens of times on the ground. The convoy of ordinary-looking sedans pulled away from the coast and blended seamlessly into Beirut's late-night traffic, 3 cars peeling off towards the diversionary target, while the rest proceeded calmly towards the affluent neighborhood of Rauch. Inside the cars, the commandos were a study in controlled tension. Their weapons were concealed, their faces were placid, but their minds were running through the final checklists of the mission. For Ehud Barak, disguised in a dark wig, a dress, and a purse containing grenades, and the soldier beside him, also dressed as a woman, the moment was surreal, the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal about to be tested against the unforgiving reality of a live operation deep inside enemy territory. As they neared Rue Verdun, the cars slowed, and the assault teams disembarked, melting into the shadows of the residential street. The moment of the act was one of controlled, synchronized violence. At precisely 1:30 a.m., the 3 Sayeret Matkal teams moved on their respective targets. Barak's team approached the building housing Mohammed al-Najjar. Using their silenced Berettas, they eliminated a PLO guard at the entrance before swiftly moving up the stairs. They placed the specially designed door charge, and the resulting explosion was a muffled crump, just enough to splinter the lock and frame. They stormed the apartment, and in the disorienting chaos of the next few seconds, al-Najjar and his wife were killed in a hail of gunfire. Simultaneously, just down the street, the second team breached the apartment of Kamal Adwan. Adwan, awakened by the noise, reached for an AK-47 he kept by his bed but was cut down before he could fire a shot. In the same building, the team also located and killed Kamal Nasser, the PLO spokesman. The third team, assigned to Ali Hassan Salameh, executed their breach with the same precision. They swept through his apartment, room by room, a fluid and lethal choreography practiced to perfection. But they found the apartment empty. The one man who was the primary impetus for the entire operation, the Red Prince himself, was not at home. He had been out late at a party and, for reasons of his own, perhaps a sudden instinct, a change of plans, or sheer luck, had decided to spend the night elsewhere. The intelligence provided by the operative had been accurate at the time of her final report. Salameh had been home earlier in the evening. But in the fluid world of espionage and counterterrorism, a window of opportunity can close in an instant. While the other 2 missions had been successful, the highest value target had escaped. The commandos, their primary objectives accomplished or determined to be unachievable, began their immediate withdrawal, a process as rehearsed and critical as the assault itself. The extraction was as tense as the insertion. As the Sayeret Matkal teams regrouped on the street, a firefight erupted. 2 Lebanese gendarmerie officers, alerted by the noise, had arrived on the scene and engaged the withdrawing commandos. In the brief, intense exchange of fire, both Lebanese officers were killed, as were 2 of the Israeli soldiers, the only IDF casualties of the night. Simultaneously, the paratrooper team's diversionary attack on the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine headquarters had devolved into a much larger battle than anticipated, drawing significant PLO and Lebanese army forces away from the main effort but at a considerable cost. The commandos scrambled back into their waiting cars, which sped away from the scene of the firefight, taking a pre-planned, circuitous route back to the designated beach. The naval commandos of Shayatet 13, who had remained near the shore, provided covering fire as the teams disembarked and scrambled into the Zodiacs. Within minutes, they were clear of the beach and moving at high speed towards the safety of the missile boats waiting offshore. Back on Rue Verdun, the woman known as Erica Chambers executed her own exfiltration plan. Her mission was complete. She calmly packed a small bag with her essential documents and money, leaving behind the apartment, the art supplies, and the cats, all the trappings of a life that had never been real. She walked out of her building, hailed a taxi, and was driven to a pre-arranged pickup point, where she was met by another Mossad team and spirited out of Lebanon the following day through a different, secure channel. She vanished as completely as she had arrived, the artist Erica Chambers ceasing to exist as the city of Beirut awoke to the bloody aftermath of the night's raid. The consequences of Operation Spring of Youth were immediate and far-reaching. For the Palestine Liberation Organization, it was a devastating blow. They had lost 3 senior leaders in a single night, and the attack demonstrated a shocking vulnerability at the very heart of their command structure in Beirut, a city they had considered a safe haven. The raid shattered the myth of their invincibility and sowed deep paranoia within their ranks, forcing the remaining leadership to go deeper underground and disrupting their operational capabilities for months to come. The Lebanese government was profoundly embarrassed and weakened, its sovereignty shown to be fragile and its security forces incapable of preventing a foreign military operation in its own capital. The incident further destabilized the delicate political balance in Lebanon, contributing to the resentments and tensions that would eventually erupt into a full-blown civil war 2 years later. For Israel, the operation was hailed as a resounding success, a powerful act of retribution for Munich and a demonstration of the long reach of its special forces. It served as a powerful deterrent, sending a clear message to its enemies that there would be no safe harbor for those who planned attacks against Israeli citizens. Strategically, the intelligence gathered in the planning and execution of the raid provided invaluable insights into the PLO's structure and operations. However, the escape of Ali Hassan Salameh was a significant failure that haunted the Mossad. The Red Prince was now on higher alert than ever, and the hunt for him would continue for nearly 6 more years, becoming a personal obsession for many within the agency. The psychological cost for the operatives involved was significant. For the woman who had lived as Erica Chambers, the mission was a testament to her skill and fortitude, but it came at the price of profound isolation and the constant strain of living a lie. The process of detaching from a deeply embedded cover identity, of shedding a personality that had been her shield and her weapon for months, was a disorienting and emotionally taxing experience, a hidden scar of the covert war. The operation raised complex moral questions about extrajudicial killings and the violation of national sovereignty, questions that were largely overshadowed at the time by the public's demand for vengeance but which would linger in the long-term analysis of Israel's counterterrorism policies. It was a stark illustration of the brutal calculus of asymmetrical warfare, where the lines between soldier and spy, and between war and assassination, become irrevocably blurred. Is it justifiable for a state to violate another nation's sovereignty to assassinate individuals it deems terrorists? Can the psychological toll on an operative, who must live a life of complete deception, ever be truly reconciled with the strategic gains of their mission? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel.